Hi, I'm Michael Bay. Welcome to my director's cut of Pearl Harbor. Speaking on this DVD right now, it's about 250 hours from the attack at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And it's kind of like I look back at that day of horror, much how America must have looked back at 1941, December 7th, and the emotions that went through people. Me watching what happened on the TV that morning will be something that I'll never forget. Hearing the word Pearl Harbor mentioned probably 100 times that day, it just brought back the sense of what those survivors all told me, of the feeling that went through them, and how the country bonded together, and this swell of patriotism that swept over the nation, and their mission to get justice. With Jeanine Basinger from Wesleyan University. She's my film professor. She is also the Wesleyan film historian, and she has written the book, The World War II Combat Film. How you doing, Jeanine?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
As well as we can be after what's happened this past couple weeks.
It was very much like the Pearl Harbor shock. I, of course, was a child during World War II and remember vividly the radio, my parents explaining to me that things were not going to be the same. And I think about that and connect the event to Pearl Harbor, even though obviously it's a different kind of enemy and would be a different kind of war. It's an interesting parallel.
It is, almost being here 60 years from when the attack of Pearl Harbor took place. This could easily be worse than what happened in Pearl Harbor.
Definitely.
Unlike Pearl Harbor, they heard it over the radio in America, so their imaginations had to deal with that tragedy, whereas this was so well photographed.
That's the main difference, is we saw it intimately. Not only did we see it, we saw it in our own homes. It came right into our house and was there as a visual event for us, which is a major difference for the American public in that regard. Let me ask you, what drew you to the subject of Pearl Harbor?
The subject matter, it was the seminal event. It started way back in May of '99. I sat in the executive office of Joe Roth, who was the motion picture president of Disney, and we went through 20 ideas that they had, and this literally was the very last idea. A friend of mine who was an executive there, Todd Garner, said, "Would you like to do a movie about Pearl Harbor?" And in that one moment I thought, who would be crazy enough to do a movie of this size? But at the same time, it was intriguing. It was, as Hollywood is trying to cut their budgets in what's going on in the economy, but to have such a large-scale idea come across, it's something that struck me as me loving history and knowing a lot about this seminal event. But once I read about this event and got really in depth with it for about 2 weeks, that's all I did was read about this. It's an event that I feel kids in America, we study in an afternoon of high school. And there's so much we don't know about the event. That's what really appealed to me. Pearl Harbor was such an emotional thing to America. And that's what struck me.
It's also an interesting subject in that it has the opportunity for the large-scale, exciting visual battles, but also opportunities for intimate, very emotional, personal stories, because it really did change everybody. It really did change America. It really did change history. So it's a great subject for an epic film. And I noticed that you chose to take the epic approach because you start with the boys as children and you end back after the war when they're married and have their own Danny, their own child. And I think it would be a very different movie if you didn't have those parentheses around it, the beginning of their childhood and then the going past the war into peacetime. I like that structure. Did you ever consider not doing it that way?
Well, it was always spoken about as being a love story, and what we liked was America coming out of World War One. The parents back then vowed to never send their boys across the seas to face the horrors that they faced in World War One. And there was kind of this new innocence in this country, and Randall Wallace captured a lot of that innocence with these boys. I personally consider it to be reckless.
I agree, and I'm not sure, sometimes people don't understand how different the times were then, and he does capture that quality. I thought that was one. He was also very effective in the script in the use of Josh Hartnett's character's father. We see that actor briefly. Great face. He's got a great face. There's a minimum of dialogue. He never appears again,
Right.
but he gets across to us the horror of war, how he does not ever want his child to be involved. He also shows us through his beating of Hartnett what Hartnett's character's life has been like. And with Affleck's character attacking him, defines the friendship of the boys and what. I mean, that was very, very effective screenwriting. Just a minimum moment that gave so much. And I thought the script is strong in those regards, in those small moments.
And I also feel that as children, there's not a better way to capture the innocence of a nation other than through children. And their love for flight. And
exactly.
This goes to their love for flight and growing up to want to be pilots, and it's very much related to a person I met named Joe Foss, who was one of the great World War II combat aces who shot down 32 Zeros over the Pacific, and he's in Tom Brokaw's book. And he is a true American hero. I had the pleasure to have him into my office. He came to speak to Ben and Josh, and we actually spent 8 hours with this man, who's a very outspoken man, and he told us what it was like to grow up, to want to be a combat pilot, to fly. He just wanted to fly. He said, the plane was, when I was in that plane, it was a part of my body. It was Ben's character and him wanting to volunteer to the American Eagle Squadron is very much right out of Joe Foss. Sound corny today, but this was how Joe Foss was. He wanted to be a combat pilot. Right here where you see this speech. This is Joe Foss's words, basically. He thought he was going to be an old man and he was going to have to train pilots. Because when you were 26, you were considered an old man. And he volunteered to go to Guadalcanal. And, with phenomenal stories. I mean, just the innocence of him getting off the boat, walking with his bag. He said he saw a bomb crater. And he says, well, that was kind of exciting to see that crater. But he had no idea what combat was going to be like. He just wanted to fly.
The glamour of flight, people forget how new it was. And most people had never flown. I mean, the most people had never flown. Joe Foss was a major hero of World War II, a name that's very famous to people who lived through the war. And of course, he's from my home state of South Dakota, where he became the governor and is like a major figure. And he's a good-looking man. He is very much like the Ben Affleck character.
Right.
So those characters have a credibility for people who were there during the war that I think maybe gets lost in some ways for younger people. There was this passion and commitment to things, to learning to fly, and then finally to winning the war. I mean, it was something that was palpable. Everybody cooperated in the United States, and I remember somebody saying to me, and I was a child when it ended, things will never be the same again. It won't be as much fun. We won't be as together as a nation, which was a surprising thing for someone to say, but the film is about that togetherness.
Right, it's very much what we're experiencing right now in this country.
Exactly, exactly. Now you go into this comedy sequence here, which is like very much traditional for combat movies, where you have these, comedy relief scenes with women, and was that done deliberately?
It was. I mean, there's some people that talk about the movie saying, I felt bad laughing in the beginning of the movie, but they have to remember where we were in history. We were isolationists. The war was going on somewhere else, far away from our shores. And when you talk to these survivors and you ask them and you look right in their eye and you say, what was Hawaii like before December 7th? And they smile, their eyes glow. They talk about what a paradise it was. It was, going to Hawaii was considered the plush job. It was what they would call being as far away from combat as they could ever be. And we actually use that line in the movie that Ben says to Kate. But it was a great time, they said. It was a swank time. I mean, that's why we go into the club scene, and we're trying to show that innocence and how the war didn't affect us until
we didn't expect it.
Until that fateful morning.
The shock of Pearl Harbor can't be as real in the movie if you don't have the prior sequences of comedy and love.
Sorry, interrupting. The door opens, enters the room, and enters the house.
Showing that people aren't focused on war.
We really wanted to see war through these three people's eyes, and then the other sub-characters. That's what the movie's really about. It's at the core. It's a love story. It's a love story about these two best friends, and with Evelyn.
I like the faces of the three main characters. The casting, I thought, was very effective because they really look like World War II people. I don't know what that means exactly, but they look like people from movies and world. She very much is like a Donna Reed kind of beauty. And they have the two males have that clean-cut sort of comic strip Steve Canyon look that represented the American combat pilots of the time. When you were casting them, did you have that in mind? I mean, or did you just
of course.
cast?
I mean, I deal in very much in research. I look through thousands of photographs. I watch old movies. That's a huge part of constructing a movie like this. This movie, I think we went through about a year and a couple months of prep. And there is a look to their faces, how they carried themselves and their body types.
Oh, they feel right to me in that regard. They really do. And so does the surrounding cast. I think it's very effective. And the simplicity of they have a sort of freshness or innocence to them, and that's right for the times.
And that's one thing to hit on, is the innocence, because when you meet these survivors, and I've met about probably 125 of them, there is a true innocence about these men. They've seen the horror, but they talk like, well, gosh, gee whiz. They say things like that. And
yeah, they're different.
You hear a real innocence about them. It's very much different than a movie like Saving Private Ryan, where the war was going on for a while, and they knew they were facing a very tough fate, as that boat is landing on the beach. Pearl Harbor, when we get into the attack, I'll speak more about it, but so many of the survivors it took them sometimes 10 minutes to realize we're under attack. Or they kept thinking it was an American pilot who was doing some practicing and who loaded live bombs, and he was going to get a whipping when he got back to the airfield.
It was simply incomprehensible. First of all, the Japanese did pull off not only a surprise attack, but an amazing military coup. No one thought that this could be done. They did not expect an enemy attack out at Pearl Harbor, out in the middle of the Pacific. Why do we have? It's interesting to me. We'll come back to that, I'm sure.
And we'll
But
come back to the casting as well.
Yes, exactly. But here you have chosen to show the story of their 4 weeks and 2 days in a flashback format where she's telling about it.
Right.
That interested me. What was gained by that? I mean, what's that about? I don't dislike it necessarily.
It would change the whole story structure.
Yes.
We tried to get the flashback out. I always loved the flashback because we were able to establish the boys going through, seeing that he had to volunteer. We got their story, and we quickly. I think this is all in 10 minutes that we kind of establish everything. And if you didn't, the establishment of the beginning story would be 15 to 20 minutes.
Yes,
And
economy.
I really believe that the first 10 minutes to set this story up was very important.
Well, what I like about the use of flashback, and of course I love flashbacks, as you may remember from school, is that it does give you economy. You cut way down on
Sorry, interrupting you to open the door.
what you would have to develop. And for a story that's heading toward war, that's a very good thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's in a tradition, again, of the World War II combat type film where they do deal with the love stories more rapidly, and to show the pressure that young couples were under.
I received hundreds of letters across the world, and especially from a lot of senior citizens in America, talking about the love story. To them, felt very real and very accurate.
Yeah, to me also.
And it's not a modern day love story. It's
No.
a very old-fashioned love story.
That's right. That's right. It's within the boundaries of what the love story of the time would be. The pressures of combat, the shortage of time for couples to get to know one another and move forward, the fear of going too far in the relationship in case the male died and was killed and the woman was left alone or pregnant, or whether married or unmarried. It does capture those parameters of what was going on with young people. And I thought that audiences divided into age groups here. The people my age and older understood this love story and really related to it, and younger people didn't understand it as well and couldn't relate to it. And it has to do with a big shift in attitudes towards sex and everything that took place after World War II. But if you compare this to films of the time, films from the war area, you see how very much it is couched in terms of the love stories of the day.
Right.
This love story down in your director's cut?
We took a few lines out, a few beats out a little bit later as we're getting closer to the attack. This is pretty much the same. It's actually all the same. Here was quite interesting. We'll go back to how the conception of Pearl Harbor came about in terms of the script and the development, but as everyone probably knows, we were under a tight budget to accomplish such a massive scope movie. The budget they gave me was $135 million, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but to do this size, scale, and scope, and especially this vast period movie, it becomes very expensive. This scene right here, believe it or not, was shot on, it was about 7 feet of concrete that went about 100 feet down. We pushed in an old locomotive that we rented for $7,000, and we covered it with steam, and two existing locomotives that's on actual tracks right now near Los Angeles.
Take your pick.
Here is right out of an old movie.
Yes, absolutely it is. Absolutely.
I thought I'd make you proud with that shot.
I did. Michael, you did. When I saw it in the theater, you'd shown me some things before, but I hadn't seen this, and I was busy nudging my husband. I said, now this is authentically from World War II. And the music is great. And there's great characterization done in this scene also. Reference to Harnett's father comes here where he says, it's an explanation of Harnett's character. He says, well, his dad kind of beat him down. I mean, you know, the script was very effective in its bare bones picking up of references like that and planting them and filling out things. I actually like a script that does things like that very simply and shows things visually. I don't like lots of belaboring of points, and I know that some people prefer the words. I like the images.
Right. I mean, when you attack a movie like this, you really have to determine what is your story, because there's so many stories to be told about Pearl Harbor, and this era. So we really had to stick to, this is about the war and these three people, how it affected these three people.
But you filled in around it nicely with the Betty and Red romance,
right.
And you know, just enough, just a tiny little bit around with the characters they meet when they go to Pearl,
right.
Where the terrors of the skies, you know, sort of just little bits that bring credibility around it, but not too much.
It's interesting when you shoot a movie, especially doing a script of this size, studios look at the final page count, because they determine page count with millions of dollars. And what I do is I cut my sub-characters down to the bare bones minimum, because I do a lot of improvising on the set. And what's interesting when you do a movie it's organic. It takes a life of its own. That's why it's very important to get that first week going, to set the vibe for the crew, the actors, to tell everyone what type of movie we're making. The first week, to me, should encapsulate everything that you're doing in this movie. So in Hawaii, we started out with some attack stuff. We started out with some stuff that had scope. We started out with some intimate love stuff, and I like actors to get to know each other so that love story can organically grow. Because let's face it, you're dealing with chemistry here, and as a director, getting involved with a love story, it's you just hope that there's chemistry between Josh and Kate and Ben and Kate.
What did you shoot that you cut out?
Oh.
That you didn't ever use?
About 300 hours of stuff.
Heavens.
But what's interesting about sub-stories is you go with the theory of a movie can become organic and things grow and things develop. Certain characters will start to pop off the screen. And when you're doing the movie, you want to keep investigating those characters. And you want to give them a little bit more when you see that they're starting to shine on that screen. And the Red and Betty thing was something that was very minimal in this script, and I kept adding to it.
It's interesting that you go with what develops. I mean, which is, the script is kind of a blueprint in that regard, and then when you start building or putting it on its feet or making it concrete in front of us and in front of our eyes, and specific, that then changes occur. You see things that you hadn't seen before. You get something from an actor that you didn't expect. Some directors, I think, are not flexible. They don't really want that. And it's interesting that in a huge budget film, even though you say it was a small budget, I mean, huge but too small budget for your film, that you were flexible in that regard. That interests me.
Well, you have to. I mean, doing The Rock, there really weren't many funny lines in that movie when you read the script. Nick Cage wanted to play his role extremely serious and macho, and I knew that Nick had a quirky side that I wanted to bring out, because he was the everyday guy. That was put in a situation where he had to eventually grow to become a man and finally kill somebody to protect his partner. His partner is Sean Connery. And through improv, a lot of humor came through that movie.
And Connery's funny, too.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this Queen Mary. I happen to like that sequence a lot. Was that in the script? I read the original script, but was that in the script going out to the... I didn't remember
It
that.
was not originally in the first couple drafts. It was added because I wanted for them to have one great night together, one great last night together, and to do something a little crazy.
That was a good image.
We shot that down in the Queen Mary, and if you could have seen where we were shooting it, I mean, there was paper cups and trash floating all over the water. We shot that down in San Pedro, which is kind of a mucky harbor area, and I think the Queen Mary at the time was on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken, and we added the skyline of New York in there.
I like that because it is beautiful visually and very romantic, and when you I like the way films give you in a simple visual way something that has great resonance. I mean, this is a unique and strange and romantic experience they have doing this thing at the Queen Mary, that it does give them, as you say, a great night that grounds them in something special together. And I thought that was a really good and different way. Instead of, they don't just go dancing and ride in a handsome cab in the park, and, you know, they do something that no one else had ever done, and we see it, and it's very beautiful looking. I thought that worked very well.
Everything in my life has led me up to this point.
Big conflict on this scene. A certain line that he wanted in the movie. He wanted a line that said, "I don't want to saddle you with sadness and regret." And to me, it was a complicated notion. And it was something that it was hard for the actors to get their head around, and there was so much talk on this line.
If I had one more night to live.
Kate just said right there. I think she does with great grace. Because let's face it, it could come out as a very cheesy line.
They play this scene well.
Could you not come see me off? Because
Came up with Michael Kaplan of her giving something to him, which she has in combat.
I don't want to saddle you with sadness and regret. It would be against the thing he just said now, which is, I will come back. The scene has to be completely about his refusing to go forward with her now because he's going to save that for after the war and believe in it. And if he's already thinking negatively about that, it's really contradictory and then undercuts the sacrifice he's making about going upstairs with her. That would be my opinion.
And it just got into huge discussions if they make love. Well, they had rubbers back then. It just got very complicated, and it was something Randall really, really wanted. But
well, I can tell you from a historical perspective that many couples, even married couples, chose not to have sex before the husband went to war for fear that the woman would be left alone, pregnant, without enough money, and that if the man were killed, it would just be impossible for her, because women did not have the kind of economic freedom or work freedom then that they do now. So that actually this is more grounded in its times than people realize, I think. Good?
it sure is. That shot pulling away from Josh. That day was when I really realized that this kid's going to be a star. I mean, he just has that classic Hollywood star charisma. And he's got this innocence about him, which I loved.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
How lush this looks right now, but if you could have seen it on the shoot, it was really... There was nothing there. There was nothing there. There was some steam, a few extras, and we're pulling this train away.
That's the old film noir tradition. For $1.45, you'll lay a smoke bomb in a fog machine, right? Using this footage is interesting. You don't do it very often, and you always have it very brief.
I like these transitions where we come to the contemporary time, but why we put all those little montages in? Honestly, there are so many uneducated kids about what was going on in the world today. I mean, believe it or not, we did polls. Who was the president back then? And you know what they said?
I'm frightened.
They said JFK. JFK.
Holy.
It's quite sad.
Sad.
Where our students.
Scary. Scary me. You're
So
scaring me.
these were I'm scaring a professor, I know, but
Yeah.
we would do these research groups, and it was amazing how little 20-year-olds. It's amazing how 20-year-olds were actually the worst informed. All right, these are college kids.
Mhm.
All right, these are some of the worst informed people in some of our research groups. So that's why we had to add these montages to help.
So they're exposition, really. I mean,
A little bit
yeah.
exposition, but it's to tell that the war was going on in Europe with Hitler, and the British were fighting, trying to hold Hitler back. This was a very common thing here. Planes were brought in, they were patched up, and they were put back out because there was so little
Equipment.
there was so little equipment, and they had to patch them up, and they were real death machines. Talking to the pilots back then, they said these were just made to kill. They were killing machines. They had no regard for the pilot whatsoever in terms of safety, because they honestly felt pilots were expendable.
It's a shock, isn't it?
Yeah.
What were the statistics, I wonder, on fighter pilots? They can't have been very good.
Well, the American Eagle Squadron had some amazing wins. The American Eagle Squadron was quite ironic. Walt Disney designed the logo of that squadron. Walt Disney said any group that wanted to get a logo, they can send in an idea and he'll draw it out for them.
Isn't that great, really? Now, did you change for the Japanese release? I see the film's a huge hit in Japan. Did you change any of this part? I mean, were there any changes made in the Japanese print?
We left it exactly the same. There was this was the one thing where there was a bit of a confusion, and this happens when you're working on a movie where you have close to a crew of 3,000 people in terms of the researchers, the people working on computers, all the effects people. I mean, it's a massive crew, and one of our art historians did some research where you're seeing these characters standing behind Admiral Yamamoto. But those characters, believe it or not, are offensive, because this is 100 years earlier they would do these things in terms of that artwork behind.
Really?
Yeah, and there was something that the Japanese, a lot of the 50-year-old Japanese said, you should probably try to change it, and digitally there was no way for us to change that silk moving and blowing in the wind, so it was something that we had to let go. And
what do the characters say?
They're war propaganda.
I see.
And the reason why I did the War Council outside, one, it's budgetary reasons, because that was a smaller scene, and I had to shoot at a location that was very close to the main scene where the Japanese are working around the pool with the ships lined up.
I'm still working on the sailors.
It's actually Hickam, which was an Army Air Corps base in Hawaii. And this is about 20 miles away from Pearl Harbor. Put something in that was contemporary today, but it was something that was just starting back then. And I found a great photographic book of some old surf photography. The surfing was going on in Hawaii at this time, and they were surfing on the long boards. There was these very heavy wood boards. That book that kid was reading, The Art of Wave Riding, is one of the first books ever written on surfing. We got that from Berkeley. It's in some museum.
Here's a case right here where you do a nice job of filling in and around making sub-characters that you're going to use later in the attack in major ways, but just a minimal presentation.
I mean, Goose has a few funny lines, but not many, but there's something that's very appealing about this character.
Right. He's a full visual character. We see him, the way he's dressed, what he's doing. He's a person to us instantly. So, and he's funny. He's a comedy character by the way you establish him completely in the frame that way. And I think that's very good use of simply setting up a character who can be used more later. We're not confused about who he is or what he represents.
This scene right here was the hardest scene to cut in the entire movie.
Why?
It was cut over and over and over and shortened.
Why?
It's
Why was
just
that?
because there are places in movies where time will drag. There are places when you watch the pace and tone of a movie, there are places where you will get bogged down. And this was a place where we were getting bogged down because we were getting quickly filled in with what was going on in the world. And we had to keep that driving pace of the impending attack coming. It was just one of those scenes, and you sometimes don't know why they're so complicated to cut, but this was one of them. And we cut it to literally the last day. It was one of our last scenes we ever locked in the movie.
When you have a cutting problem like that, Michael, what drives your decision-making process?
Well, you have to, first of all, look to get the very important information and to streamline it as much as possible. And then you have to deal with what you actually shot to conceive of that montage. Sometimes you didn't have enough stuff to shoot. Or sometimes you didn't have enough footage that was shot, which sometimes will make your cuts longer.
So you have a coverage problem?
Sometimes it might be a coverage, me. I mean, I'm one of those directors that shoots quite a bit, and I always have a lot of choices for coverage.
You know what that scene is? That's a 3-hour movie in that scene that you're doing in a few seconds. You're linking them romantically and visually across time and space. You're showing character for both of them in what they say and write to one another, but you're hard driving the war and the combat forward, involving England in the war, showing what's happening to him. What you're accomplishing in that is huge, narratively.
Well, you're also condensing time in that section as well. This scene was shot the very first day of production, and kind of gave you a sense of what we were doing here. We shot this on the USS Missouri, which was a battleship that was built once after Pearl Harbor had been attacked. And we had such an amazing volunteer spirit from the sailors at Pearl Harbor today that were actually in this scene. They felt very honored to be in this movie, and they wanted to pay tribute to their fallen brothers. This scene, I think the day consisted of the Cuba boxing scene and this. It was a pretty ambitious day. Fudged history a little bit with this shot. We took this there was a Japanese propaganda film where they did a recreation of how the attack happened, it's taken from a famous photograph where someone is in the water pointing out the different ships. We felt this was a way to quickly escalate the Japanese story, because this wasn't about the Japanese in this movie. We had to make their story very succinct. Now, I chose this location, which was a World War II gun emplacement on the coast of California. Considering I think I probably only had the Japanese shooting for about a couple days, so that's why I wanted to go with this location as one of their main locations where we were shooting, and that's why I had to use the War Council, which was right down the street from that location. That's why I chose to do it outside. We did in England, where they would take an old house or manor, and they would create an airfield, right? They would do this all over England. They would create airstrips that were on grass. To answer your question, Jeanine, about what films did we watch, I saw Midway, obviously Tora Tora Tora, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, but the big inspiration to me was watching tons of combat footage, real combat footage, real aerial footage. So much to do in prepping this movie. It's not like I had a lot of luxurious time to go watch movies.
Right. You didn't watch In Harm's Way?
I did watch In Harm's Way.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Yes.
There are wonderful documentaries like Thunderbolt, Memphis Belle, and also...
Saw Memphis Belle.
Yeah, the great documentary called Fighter Pilot, where an individual who was a fighter pilot you know, in retrospect, years later, told the stories of how horrible it really was, how dangerous, what you were saying earlier, how these planes were really, truly death traps.
They were death traps, and then especially when you're inside one of those bombers, with the bullets that just can rip right through, and the flak problems that these are bursts of metal pellets that pepper the plane. It just, nothing is made for the comfort of these guys in these planes.
Tell us how you, tell us about this, putting together this, designing it, real planes, fake planes, CGI.
Well, we 4 Spitfires. We had the last flying German Messerschmitt.
One left.
Is the very last one in the world, and unfortunately we crashed it on the grass runway there because the landing gear, the brakes went out, so we crashed it into a fence, but we fixed it.
Up the budget a little.
There was quite a lot of development that went into the tracers and the smoke elements. There were a lot of advances made at ILM to create this 3D smoke that you were able to fly through. It sounds easy, but it's extremely complicated in terms of the amount of computer power you need to make some of this 3D smoke.
It has really good depth in that sense.
It's kind of interesting growing up. When I was 15, I worked at Lucasfilm and worked in the art department, filing storyboards from Raiders of the Lost Ark and different Star Wars movies, and being in awe of how they made movies. I got a letter from Rick McCallum, who is George Lucas's producer. He and George had seen...
Okay, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to stop it. Alright, I'm going to continue for the 43 minutes or 52 seconds. I'm going to resume the other part coming soon.